Hello guys, welcome to rock sculpting. In this tutorial we're gonna introduce some nice techniques to create naturalistic rock. Okay, now the key idea here is we want to make something looks really natural and detailed, and also looks like it has been sculpted by nature for a period of time already. So I'm gonna start with something super simple, just a ball here. Okay, and then the material wise I'm gonna just use the basic material. Okay, and then before I do any detail, I have to make it polymesh 3D, and then I have to at least give my rock the basic shape I needed for it. Okay, so it could be any brush. So right now what I'm just using is edge polish and move to trying to figure out the basic shape of my rock. Now the idea here is to get something not very symmetrical on every aspect. Okay, and the easiest thing you can go for is actually go out and then pick up the nicest rock you can find on the street. Okay, that way you can get a very nice real reference, and it's not really that hard to get a rock, I think, unless your neighbor thinks the rock belongs to them and you cannot just take them away. But I think they're pretty generous on this part. But anyway, so if you look at the rock from the silhouette, you can do that by going to the flat color. Okay, what you want to achieve is that you want to make all those different lines, like that line, and then that line, and then the other line. You want to make them not the same length or direction. Okay, so give them proper variation so they looks natural. Okay, we try to avoid similar shapes. Okay, all right, looking good. Let me go back to my basic material. Okay, maybe just some more sculpting on the edge to give it harder edge. Rock, although we all believe they're super hard, right? But based on how many times they have been exposed, how long they have been exposed to the sun and water and all sorts of other stuff, they may have actually super rounded shape. Okay, like the ones you can find on these seashore or the side of the water, the river. Okay, you will see that not all of the rocks there are really hard edged, so you don't have to make it super hard, but you wanted to at least give it a fairly hard looking contour, so it's not like soft, it's solid. Okay, anyway, so this is the first step, just laying out. I don't even did any Dynamesh yet, so let me move on to Dynamesh it before we move on to smaller detail. So geometry and then Dynamesh. I'm gonna go for something not really that low, so 128, and let me Dynamesh it. Okay. Alright, the next step is using this brush called the Trim Smooth Border. That brush will be hidden underneath the brush. That is the left box. Okay, brush. And then there is one called the Trim, which is over here. And then you want to choose this brush called the Trim Smooth Border. Okay. When that brush is selected, you also want to go to the stroke and go to the alpha and give it a square like alpha. Okay. And then you also want to go change your focal shift to a fairly low value, so you don't have really that much fall off to get a very harsh result. Now if you try to use this brush to sculpt something on the surface of your model, see that it's giving you some random hard surfaces. Okay, it's really hard to know what's actually happening, but if you really want to know what's happening, you can try this. If you sculpt it on a flat plan, it doesn't really do too much. Okay, let me make a flat plan here. It doesn't do anything. But if you drag it and move it to the edge, you see now it's starting going down, and it's trying to create a plane that is the same position where the brush is, but still creating a plane that its direction is the same as where you started, the same plane as where you started. So that's what it's trying to do. But because the surfaces are not perfect, it always have some tilting things. So that's why it can give you very interesting hard planes across the surface if you just try to stroke across any surface. Okay, so I'm gonna use this particular unique characteristic of this brush to help me form a very interesting shape on the surface of my model. You see right now what I'm doing here is actually holding them out to push things outwards, because not all the shape is just being pushed in. If you keep pushing in stuff, then you will eventually get a super rounded shape. And when you get too much stretching on the topology, you may want to dynamesh it again. Okay. All right. So right now, what I'm just trying to do is finding some interesting variations across my rock. The thing you want to avoid is super simple shapes like that cube corner I'm creating there, so I'm trying to break that up. But really there's no need to try to control everything, because the rock is not that generic, so it can change a lot, and any shape you have there could be working, so don't bother too much on controlling it, because it's really hard to control what the brush gives you, because you never know if the underlying face you're drawing have any variation on it. Okay, so what you want to have though is trying to figure out again, trying to create non-symmetrical or similar shapes, but rather more organic, and then more variation and contrast between different shapes. Sometimes I like to create this kind of thing, sorry. See, I have two lines. Alright, so those two lines are happening on some sort of really harsh rocks, and I think that's happening when they break. Okay, so I can create those kind of very sharp transitions there. The key is that you can stroke from a lower face and just keep pushing it. It's gonna create that for you. Push this out. Okay. Let me dynamesh it again. Okay, just in case I need to use a more even topology. So I'll keep dynameshing it. The one thing you don't have to worry about is dynameshing too much, because this stage is still laying out. There's no need to try to preserve any sharp edge you created earlier. There's always a way. Always a way to make them the sharpness back. So don't worry about destroying them. And try to experiment. It doesn't mean the shape you already went over is perfect and has to be like that. It's always having chance to be better. Okay, now some other characteristics you can do for the rock is that, for example, if the rock is bricked by some super strong force like earthquake or something, they have a really strong unbreak-up point, like maybe let's see, maybe here I can just here I can cut that out using clip curve. Okay, so I can have a really strong breakup here, and then I can of course refining it using my trim smooth border again. So again, a good reference would be nice, and this is actually from my reference. Okay. Just trying to break up that edge. Okay, so it's now it's just a straight line. Okay, so when you're happy and you have strokes through the entire surface, and you think, okay, I think I'm okay with the big shape now. So what's next? Well, there are a couple things you can do here. Of course, you can keep refining it, but if you want to get a super hard edge or the super hard edge back, you can use this clay polish thing, which is underneath clay polish. It's right above Dynamesh, and then clay polish it. What that polish does is making the edge super sharp, but sometimes it also destroys the hardness of the lens. Okay. So the thing you can do with it is that you can change the settings. I just Dynameshed it. I think it's trying to think about something. It doesn't know what's happening, or let's wait for it to go back. So the thing is, I don't want it to be smoothing my rock too much. So what I want to do here is changing the sharpness all the way up. Okay, and then clay polish. I will just make it sharp but not smoothing anything. Okay, let's Dynamesh it again. So that's why I say that it's really not that important to try to keep sharp edge that much, because you can always use clay polish to get the sharpness back. Okay, now after I have the basic layout and my sharpness back, then I can move on to more detailed stuff. Okay, what I'm gonna do here is trying to refine my layers and then figure out the distribution of the variations, meaning that I want some part to be fairly clean and some other parts to have a lot of smaller layers like this, so I have those contrast. You don't want it to be details everywhere. You want it to be, you want it to be having some interesting contrast. Okay, it's like not all rock looks nice. So I think I need more subdivision level. Let me go to Dynamesh and then turn that up to 256, and then Dynamesh it again. Okay, and then I can find some area that I think, okay, that's where I wanted to have a lot of smaller detail. For example, here is where I have some layers there, right? So what I'm going to do is start enhancing those by drawing even more interesting variation on those area. You can use smaller strokes to just go through the surface to give it a very interesting rocky kind of variation there. Let me create one more small layer there. Okay, doesn't seem to be super visible. I'm gonna use my damp standard to help me build up that shape. So you can use other tools, of course. Okay, what I'm trying to do here is just refining my little layering here. Don't really care about if I have too much aliasing thing here. Okay, can be really easily cleaned up by using Dynamesh and then click polish. Just trying to give it more interesting detail. Oh. Alright, let me move on to the surrounding. I think just want to refine some of the forms. So I have smaller layerings over there and there. Okay, so it looks really dense and strong, but on the other hand, those bigger shapes here are cleaner. Okay, so you can have this contrast. So I want to keep what's happening here in the middle fairly clean. So I'm gonna go carefully draw some bigger strokes to create fairly even and bigger shapes. So the brush size actually can help you to control how much detail you have. Bigger brush size will even out and create very big planes, and smaller brush can give you smaller variation. I have a mask there. Anyway. Alright, I like that. Try to avoid really straight edge unless you need something like this, right? The other edges, and oftentimes on the rock, those kind of edges, they're sharp, but they're not straight. Okay, so you don't want something really straight like this. You want something curvy, or at least have some curvature. I think that's also depending on different rock, but just avoid super straight lines and just try to push and pinch them around to give them variation. I shouldn't say the curved because they are not. They're lesser curved than they're straightness. So they're more like a straight line curve, but they're not completely straight. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Okay. So again, if you want to have smaller details, just make the brush smaller, stroke through the surface, and that'll give you some random variations there. Don't forget to use Alt sometimes, because if you don't use Alt, you're only pushing things in all the time, which will give you shrinking in result. So you don't want every shape to be looking like a concave shape or pushing in shape. So be patient and then go through the entire surface at least once, so you have every part carefully sculpted before we move on to the next step. Okay, so just some random stroke here. This guy, maybe I need bigger brush. Here I have some layer too. I'm gonna maybe build up from there and create more smaller layer. Oh. I think that one is like sticking out too much. Let me smooth that a little bit, and then just use my smooth border to push it. Maybe I need to dynamesh it. Actually, I want this part to be cleaner and the other side to be having some layers, but maybe not that much, so I'm gonna clean those up. Okay. Don't hesitate to destroy something if you don't like those layers I don't really like. Okay. Here, this concave part, maybe I can build some layer here instead. So I'm gonna drag using move tool to drag this up. Okay. And then use my trim smooth border to, because of that differentiation on that little mountain I created, I should be able to have some layer. Let's see if I can go from, let me just make it more or less like a steep plane by using my clay build up, and then start drawing out my little planes. I think I need a flatter plane to start with. Okay, I think I did it on the other side. Anyway, All right. So I think I went through every surface here at least once to start detailing and then distribute the variations on detail. So I have like bigger shapes like this, smaller variations out there. So I think I'm good to go to the next stage. Okay, which is creating some natural effect on it, because it's really sharp and really tough. I'm sorry, really strong. But the thing is that after some certain amount of time exposed to nature, things like water and things like that, it may not be in shape anymore. So some of the things are going to be eroded, and you'll have cracks too. Okay, so we need those things also to make it eventually look nice. Let me dynamesh it again, and then maybe just clay polish it one more time to have a really sharp detail on it. Okay, so let's move on to give it some interesting variations. The first thing I want to add is some smaller erosion on it. Okay, things like this concave area may have eroded. So how do I get those concave area? It's actually not that hard to do in ZBrush. All you have to go find is its masking, and then you have those masking by settings. And here I want to go mask by AO. Let me dynamesh it. Okay, and then I can go for the mask by ambient occlusion. This is going to take a little while though, so you have to be patient and wait for it to finish. What it does is it's baking the ambient occlusion directly on the model and mask it using the AO. So it requires baking a AO, which we all know that it's really slow. It's slower than baking normal map or other things. But after that, you'll see that the concave area are being masked. You can reverse the mask and to see what's actually happening here. Okay, now there are a couple of options you can do. The first thing you can do is here you can go to deformation, and then you can actually just drag down the inflate. Okay, that's gonna make the concave area to go in. Okay, I may not need that to go in a little bit. Okay, that can enhance the concave area to make them look more visible. Okay, and then you can of course use masking and then go for the other one. Oh, I think I pressed mask band. I've been occluded again. Anyway, of course you can. Let's wait for the program to respond. When ZBrush pops up that warning, there is a good chance that it can still go back. Just wait for it to go back. Okay. So another thing you can do is using mask by cavity, or you can actually change the intensity of the ambient occlusion, so you can get a different result. Okay. Let's go to deformation and then drag the inflate in. If you really want to erode it a lot, you can do that. It's gonna push a lot of surfaces in to create those bumpy dots instead of it. One of the things is that even if they're going in, right? Sometimes it does feels like it's having some part that you don't want to go in, like that thing, and that looks a little bit weird. So before you push them in, you can also go to this thing called the morph target. You can store the morph target, and then you go push them in using the inflate. Okay, and then you can go back and then use this brush called the morph brush, which is this guy, and then you can pen on the model, and that's gonna morph some of the things back. So you eliminate some of the things you don't want to have in like those bigger areas, or at least to give them subtle transitions, which will make them look much more reasonable. Okay, like maybe even some area you don't really want them to be there at all, like this area that's destroying my shape here. Okay, so really useful tool here. The morph target is storing their original location, and then you can use morph brush to go back. So I still want some erosion on the concave area, but not everywhere. So I can use this brush to delete the erosion I have earlier on some of the areas, or at least weaken them if that's not what I want. Okay. All right. And then another mask you can use is, of course, the mask below ambient occlusion, which is the masked back cavity. Okay, you can do that here. What it does is masking the smaller concave area, even the ones that are on the top of any bigger surface. Okay, you can do the same thing. Go back to morph target, and then let's delete this one first, and then store the morph target, and then you can go back to deformation here, and then inflate those in. Oh, actually, let's invert the mask before we do that. Okay, I can inflate those in. Okay, and then clear the mask, and then I can use my morph brush to delete some of the smaller things I don't want to have or weak them. Okay. So now we can gradually have a lot of smaller variations on the model, especially those small concave areas that is really hard to manually sculpt, but we can just use the smart mask to find them for us, and then we can just determine where and how many do we want them and how strong do we want them. Okay. Still kind of want some because they're not perfect. None of the surface of the rock should be perfect, so it should have something like that, but it's not really too strong and too even when you just push them in. So use the morph target to get some of the shape back. Okay. So after that, we want to actually start creating some even smaller erosions, or smaller. If you look at some very long-term exposed rocks, you see that they have little holes on them that is going in, because I think that's because of the sculpting of the water, or even some animal, some creature on it. Okay. So, and they're oftentimes happening on the concave area too, so we can still go to the masking, which is here, and what I'm gonna do here is go back to AO, and then have the occlusion go even higher than that, so I can have a bigger fall off, and then mask ambient occlusion. Okay. Reverse the mask, maybe smooth it a little bit. Okay, what I'm gonna do here is apply a noise on it. Okay, now you can go to the noise tab. There is actually a lot of nice noise. I'm gonna go for this one. Oh, actually that one looks nice too. Okay, so when you apply that noise, if you have mask, then they will be applied only on those masked area, which is the concave area. You won't have to have those smaller erosion result on it. Okay, and then when you're happy, just go apply. That's gonna be underneath surface, and then apply. And that way you have the concave area that have a little smaller dots or holes on them to have the erosion effect. You can compare the different before and after. Okay, you can choose other noises if you wanted to, and you can fine tune it, of course. I think I can make the fallout even bigger if I want to have more erosion. Okay, let me try maybe that one. That one could do something completely different. Actually looks quite nice. I can go to the edit and to tweak it, like the size of the effect. Okay, looking quite nice, I think. And I'm just gonna go OK and then apply, and then I can clear the mask. Okay, so that's erosion. I think it's necessary for rocks that you think you want to give them some kind of like long-term feel on it. You have to use that to break down the concave part. And then lastly, you want to have cracks. Okay, so for cracks, I do recommend you to manually just draw the cracks. Okay, so I'm gonna do that using my DEM standard. Okay, maybe I can have one here because I do enjoy drawing the smaller cracks. Okay, because it does feels like really bring up the detail of the rock. Okay, so I'm just gonna manually do this, and it's depending on if you like to do detailing or not. The only thing I think I'm trying to I'm following here is that I want the crack to be stronger at the beginning and then weaker in the middle. Okay, and then also the direction of the crack, or the distribution of the crack actually, should be somehow well controlled so they support the idea of variation. Okay, so they're not happening everywhere, but they're happening on somewhere that you want them to be super dense, and then somewhere if you want to have lesser, you have lesser, but not just not every part. And you can even just have the cracks at the place you want it to be more visible or more attractive. Okay, just position those cracks there instead. Okay, and the direction of the crack, I will try to follow this existing smaller details. Okay, and really the direction, I think that's really depending on what kind of this force has been applied on the rock. Okay, they could have all different sorts of shapes, or even just parallel or perpendicular with each other. But you can definitely go look for the reference you have and then try to mimic that. Okay, and you see after creating the crack and the erosion and everything, that's when the rock really feels natural or convincing, because those things are needed and they exist on real rock. The previous ones, when we're laying out the big plan and the variation of the layers, those are just block outs, and they will feel something is missing. Okay, if you don't do this this part. At least the crack, I think it's really important to have. Even your drawing is very new rock, those smaller cracks really helps a lot to sell it. Okay. And of course the big layouts, if you can make the big layout look super nice, then I would say you already succeed. Even without those smaller detail, it should look quite nicely. Okay, so this is the sculpting of rock. Okay, of course, depending on different kind of rock, you can of course polish it using edge polish to round some of the edges, because some of the rock are really rounded, so it's not necessarily to be super hard edge on some of the parts. Okay, so they can be softed if you want to do that. Okay. Now, final step is, of course, I have a rock. It's in ZBrush. It's useless, so let's transfer it to a model that can be used somewhere else. Okay. Let me go to the subtool. Okay, I'm gonna go for a duplicate, and then this new duplicated one will be zero measured. So I'm gonna go for zero measure. Okay. That's going to give me a low resolution model that I can actually create UV and bake normal map. Okay, now I have this zero measured model. Okay, now this is good enough to use in outside packages. But if you're doing game engine, maybe you can even lower that down more, which isn't hard to do. Just go to geometry, and then you can zero measure to a lower target poly count, maybe just 1, and then zero measure it. Okay, so now you get a model that is very low. Okay, if that's still not low enough, you can just go half and then zero measure. It's gonna half downside the resolution. But I do encourage you to at least have some nice silhouette, okay, before you try to crank it down too much. Try to bring it down too much. So I'm gonna go for maybe 0.5, turn adaptive on. That will be flexible, so if there is some needs for higher resolution, it will do that. Let me zero measure this guy. Just trying to testing like which value is faster for me to zero measure it. Okay, find out the perfect value that I can use for zero measure. Okay, so now I got a model like this. It's actually fairly good. Okay, now UVing it is not hard either, but before I do that, I better project the information back. Okay, so what I will do here is Control D, and I want to see how many polygon is there. It's actually very low. It's 2 something. My total points is the vertex on this model is actually already more than that. Okay, so you can just go. Let me subdivide again just to be super high-res. Okay, let's go to project and then project out. Okay, that's gonna project all the information back to my new model. Okay, after the projection, now I have a model that does have very similar shape as my old one. When that happens, it's just because your search distance is somehow wrong. If that's not a big, big error, you can just clean it up yourself, or you have to go back and reproject to you want to crank up that distance. Okay, but I think mostly the detail is transferred. Now I have a model that has the perfect topology, subdivision level, and high quality detail, all lived on this guy. Cool. Now it's time to do the UV. The UV is done right here in ZBrush. You want to go for the plugin and then go for the UV master, and then just go turn off symmetry. Okay, and then just before you do that, work on clone, really important. If not, then your sides will be go wrong. Okay, unwrap it. Let's preview the result. That's how it looks like. Not bad actually. Although I have a huge space wasting there, but it's just a rock. Okay, let's copy the UV here and go back to step 2 and then select my old one. And then you can go back to UV master and then paste the UV. That way, my new model now will have UV. You can morph to the UV and take a look. Okay, that's the UV. Cool. And then you can also up-res to the high resolution model and take a look. I don't know why it changes the material for me, and also polypaint it. Anyway. And of course you can preview it in other materials to see how it looks like with different material to see if that's the result you want. But anyway, that's the whole process of doing a rock in ZBrush. So in the next tutorial, I'm going to show you the texturing process of doing this, which you probably already know. But that's what I think is important. That's how I think it's important for doing a rock sculpting in ZBrush. So anyway, see you next time.